My wife treated my love and loyalty like an unlimited ATM card, draining me emotionally and financially until I had nothing left. Then she mocked me with her friends. So I disappeared without a word, and the way her life fell apart after that was more devastating than she ever could have imagined. My parents have been together for around 35 years, and I always observed my father attending to every need of my mother. He'd offer small tokens, arrange pleasant surprises, and go out of his way to ensure she never had a worry. Growing up witnessing that, it simply felt natural for me to emulate his actions. I encountered my wife, Emily, a fictitious name, of course, at a friend's birthday gathering about 5 years ago. She was, without a doubt, the most captivating woman in the room, fair-haired, with a sweet smile, and she laughed with ease. We immediately connected. I recall thinking how fortunate I was that evening. I was never the most self-assured person, so her showing interest in me felt surreal from the beginning. I treated her exceptionally well, like sending blooms just because. If she mentioned she liked something, presto, I'd have it ordered before she had even completed her thought. I didn't even dwell on it much. It was second nature. Emily always seemed immensely grateful. She'd beam broadly, kiss me, and express how fortunate she was. But looking back now, I realize she rarely offered anything in return, not material possessions, which I don't care about, but emotionally or in terms of effort, there was always this subtle imbalance. It was consistently minor matters, like she'd expect me to manage all our arrangements, meals, excursions, everything. If something was faulty or required mending, that was invariably my responsibility. She'd simply say, "You're better at it," and dismiss it with a chuckle. I didn't mind. It felt good to care for her. Perhaps I enjoyed feeling indispensable, or maybe I was just oblivious, likely both. Anyway, fast forward, we tied the knot approximately 2 years ago. I remember standing at the altar, thinking this was it. I was genuinely enthusiastic about spending my life with her. I loved being her chosen partner. Being the one who looked after her brought a smile to her face. It felt good, truly. And life was mostly smooth sailing initially. But over the last year or so, things subtly began to shift. Emily became more demanding in ways I barely noticed at first. A random designer handbag here, a spa day there. I had a respectable occupation, and we weren't struggling financially, so I didn't question it much. I assumed that was simply what married life entailed. Then her friends started becoming a more prominent part of our lives. I'm not suggesting companions are detrimental. I have my own as well. But Emily's friends were distinct. They were constantly present, perpetually discussing extravagant trips, luxury brands, opulent dining establishments. Emily started transforming, too. Her preferences became more expensive, her requests more frequent. But I simply went with the flow. Happy spouse, happy life, right? Looking back, I should have observed how she rarely inquired about my day, rarely asked if I needed anything. But I suppose when you're engrossed in something, you overlook the obvious, or perhaps you opt to disregard it because acknowledging it would be painful. Then last week occurred. I finished work earlier than usual. My manager gave me a pass, something about a project concluding ahead of schedule. I thought, great, I'll surprise Emily at home, maybe actually have dinner together. Recently, we had been somewhat distant, so I wanted to reconnect, perhaps remind myself why I was working so diligently. When I pulled into the driveway, her friends' automobiles were parked outside. No major concern, they visited often. But when I stepped inside, the atmosphere immediately felt off. You ever enter a room and instantly know you've interrupted something? Yes, precisely like that. The chatter ceased abruptly, and there was this awkward silence before Emily forced a bright grin and approached me, giving me a swift, perfunctory embrace. "You're home early," she stated, but it wasn't welcoming. More like a declaration. "Yeah, thought I'd surprise you," I replied, attempting not to make it strange. Her friends simply offered me these uneasy smiles, shifting uncomfortably. The energy in the room was peculiar, heavy and tense, as if they had just been discussing something they shouldn't have. But Emily quickly changed the topic, returning to laughing loudly and talking about a girl's trip they were planning. I dismissed the oddness, assuming I was merely imagining things. After all, it had been a long day. Later that night, Emily was already asleep, and I was scrolling aimlessly on my phone, trying to unwind. A message appeared from Rachel, one of Emily's friends who had been there earlier. Rachel was someone I never communicated with directly, friendly but distant, So seeing her name was peculiar. I opened the message. It was just a single voice recording, nothing else. That made my stomach churn uncomfortably, but I pressed play anyway. The moment Emily's voice emerged, I knew it was bad. She sounded different, arrogant, mocking, even cruel. "Seriously, he's like my personal doormat," she chuckled casually. Her friends erupted into laughter. I literally have to do nothing. I cry a little, smile sweetly, and he hands over whatever I want. I swear he's the easiest guy to manipulate. Her friends laughed louder. Rachel's voice softly interjected. That's kind of messed up. Emily snorted. Come on, Rachel, it's hilarious. He doesn't even realize how pathetic he looks sometimes. Like, literally last week, I just mentioned wanting that stupid spa retreat to Grand, right? Next morning, he had it booked without even blinking. It's embarrassing how desperate he is to please me. Honestly, I could probably tell him to lick the floor and he'd still ask if I needed anything else. Rachel did not respond after that. The recording concluded there, leaving me in stunned silence. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, just replaying the audio, heart pounding, ears ringing. My wife, the woman I'd spent years cherishing, indulging, and supporting, was ridiculing me like some pitiful loser in front of her acquaintances. And the most painful aspect was that, deep down, a part of me knew she wasn't incorrect. I had become precisely what she described, a doormat, so desperate to be appreciated that I allowed myself to be exploited without even noticing. I did not sleep at all that night. I quietly rose, departed the house, and drove around aimlessly, replaying every foolish decision I'd made to reach this point. Something inside me shifted that night, though. A switch flipped in my mind. I wasn't going to confront her immediately. That would be too easy, too predictable. No, Emily deserved something far more significant. She deserved to experience precisely what she'd subjected me to, piece by humiliating piece. After driving around all night contemplating it, I arrived home just before dawn. Emily was still asleep. Naturally, she had no idea I'd even left. I did not sleep at all, though. Instead, I sat at our kitchen table with a cup of coffee, reviewing every moment of our marriage in my head. The more I reflected, the angrier I became, not just at Emily, but mostly at myself. How did I permit things to escalate this far? How had I been so oblivious? By the time she awakened, I had already decided how I was going to handle this. No arguments, no shouting matches, none of that emotional drama she expected. She'd witnessed that from me before, me getting upset, feeling guilty, trying even harder to appease her. Not this time. Now I was simply calm, even detached, and something within me relished it. Emily shuffled into the kitchen, yawning, attempting to appear charming, as always. Normally, I'd smile, inquire about her sleep, offer breakfast. Instead, I merely glanced at her and looked away, sipping my coffee without uttering a word. She hesitated, clearly disoriented. Morning, she said, sounding uncertain. I did not reply immediately. I allowed the silence to linger for a few seconds, then looked up, making direct eye contact. Morning, I finally stated flatly. Then, without another syllable, I rose, retrieved my keys, and walked past her toward the exit. She was bewildered. Wait, you're leaving already? Where are you going? Out, I stated simply. Got things to attend to. Things? She inquired, frowning now, clearly irritated by my abrupt demeanor. What things? I paused at the threshold, turning to face her. My things, I said calmly. I'll be back when I'm back. Then I departed without another glance. It felt incredible, as if for the first time in our relationship, I was finally in control. Emily had no idea how to handle that. Over the next few days, I maintained that demeanor. I did not confront her or mention the recording. I didn't even hint that I knew. Instead, I simply started withdrawing. Small things at first, no random gifts, no dinner dates, no spontaneous trips. If Emily desired something, she'd have to ask directly, and even then, I'd decline half the time. She was disoriented, perplexed, clearly trying to ascertain what was happening. I began to recall clearly all the times I'd capitulated when I shouldn't have. Late-night food runs when she suddenly craved sushi, canceling plans with my friends because she needed me home, or spending hundreds on random items she said would make her happy, only to see them discarded after a couple of weeks. The more I replayed it in my mind, the angrier I became, mostly at myself. I realized how much I'd gone to extreme lengths, merely hoping for a modicum of appreciation or validation from someone who never intended to provide it. Every memory of her indifference only solidified my resolve. No more. The benevolent version of me vanished. She attempted her usual tactics, feigned sweetness, forlorn puppy dog eyes, but they had no effect. One evening, she even resorted to tears, claiming she needed some preposterous designer garment because all her acquaintances possessed one. Normally, I'd yield instantly. This time, I barely glanced up from my laptop. No, I stated flatly. What? She retorted, clearly shocked. Then ask them to purchase one for you. I calmly interrupted her, not even looking up. She stood there stunned, then stormed off, likely messaging her friends about my sudden unpleasantness. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I began making preparations. I opened new bank accounts she was unaware of, altered passwords on all important accounts, and even acquired a separate phone line. I was not taking chances. Each step made me feel more resolute. I appreciated this new version of myself. I also quietly met with a divorce attorney, one recommended by a colleague who had undergone a similar experience. The lawyer was unyielding, precisely the kind of person I required. When I presented all the details, Emily's spending, the recorded conversation, all the financial specifics, he chuckled, shaking his head. "Trust me," he said, "she's going to regret every word she uttered." Back at home, Emily grew increasingly agitated. She attempted to confront me several times about my sudden shift. Each time, I'd simply stare back at her, utterly devoid of emotion, and inquire if there was an issue. She'd lose her nerve immediately, mumbling something about me acting strangely, then retreating. She was obviously fearful, probably worried I'd finally understood her. Her friends must have sensed something too, because suddenly Emily was hosting them at our house less often. When they did visit, I made a point of lingering nearby, quietly asserting my presence, watching them squirm under my detached gaze. Rachel, who sent me the recording, barely met my eyes, probably uncertain if she'd done the right thing or if I was going to cause a scene. But there would be no scene, at least not yet. I wasn't interested in cheap drama. I wanted Emily to experience precisely what she'd inflicted upon me. I wanted her to realize that the man she'd ridiculed, mocked, and exploited for years was gone forever. Approximately 2 weeks after the recording, I started hearing hushed conversations. Emily's friends quietly distancing themselves from her. They perceived the shift in power, without my financial contributions or willingness to fund their absurd lifestyle. Emily was no longer useful. Watching her lose control of the narrative, seeing her comprehend that her influence was waning, felt incredibly gratifying. One evening, Emily confronted me directly, clearly desperate. "Are you planning to leave me?" she asked bluntly, her voice trembling slightly. I paused, gazing directly into her eyes, and smiled faintly. "Why, Emily, would you deserve such a thing?" She seemed unsure how to respond, her eyes wide and fearful. I had never spoken to her in that manner before. She was accustomed to sweetness, to weakness, not this calm, unwavering confidence. But she did not merit that benevolent version of me. She needed to be confronted directly, to take things seriously. The more assertive and composed I became, the more diminished she appeared. It was as if a mask had fallen from her face, revealing how fragile and insecure she truly was beneath all her arrogance. That realization made my decision even easier. The next step was selecting precisely when and how to deliver the final blow, the one that would shatter her carefully constructed facade forever. I desired witnesses. I wanted everyone who'd ever laughed with her to see her true nature exposed. After that brief confrontation with Emily, things at home became exceedingly strange. She started acting differently, almost panicky. It's amusing how, when someone loses control over you, they suddenly recognize just how tenuous their grip was in the first place. She began randomly calling me at work during the day, attempting to be excessively sweet and checking in on me. "Just wanted to say hi," she'd text with little heart emojis. I didn't respond to most of it. At first, I was surprised by how quickly she transitioned from arrogant manipulation to desperate insecurity. But looking back, it made sense. Her entire identity had become intertwined with her ability to control me, to make me do whatever she desired. Now, without that power, she was spiraling. One evening, she attempted a new strategy. She actually prepared dinner. For context, Emily never cooked, truly, never. It was always takeout or me handling the meals. I arrived home from work, to find her setting the table, looking nervous and hopeful. "I made your favorite," she announced proudly, attempting that sweet voice that used to disarm me. "Steak, potatoes, all of it neatly plated. It actually looked good, I won't lie." I paused, allowing silence to fill the room as I removed my coat and tossed my keys onto the counter. Finally, I met her eyes, completely devoid of emotion. "Thanks, but I already ate," I lied casually. Her face fell, genuinely hurt. "Oh," she said softly, looking down. "Well, maybe tomorrow." "Maybe." I interrupted her coldly, then walked right past her, leaving her standing there, probably wondering how she'd lost me so completely. To be clear, I didn't feel good about being cold like that, but it felt necessary. Emily needed to realize that she couldn't simply flip a switch and regain control over me. For once, she had to experience rejection. Meanwhile, my lawyer had outlined a plan, careful, calculated, devastating. I had gathered financial records, screenshots of Emily's extravagant shopping habits, text messages she'd sent demanding money, and of course, Rachel's voice recording. I had ample evidence that clearly demonstrated how manipulative she'd been throughout our entire marriage. One day, while at work, Rachel messaged me again. "Hey, can we talk? It's important." I was hesitant but agreed to meet her after work, wanting to hear what she had to say face to face. We met at a small coffee shop near my office. Rachel seemed nervous, almost guilty. She barely looked at me, fidgeting with her coffee cup. "I'm truly sorry," she began quietly. "About Emily, about all of it." She hesitated. "Why send me that recording?" I asked bluntly. Rachel bit her lip, finally looking at me directly. "Because Emily needed a reality check, and honestly, so did I. Watching her disrespect you, it stopped being amusing a long time ago." I leaned back, processing that. "So why are you still friends with her?" "I'm not," she admitted, sighing heavily. "None of us really are. Everyone's distancing themselves. Emily's realizing pretty quickly she doesn't have many genuine friends left." We conversed a little more, and Rachel shared some of the things Emily had been saying lately about me, about how strange I'd become, about her worries I was concealing something. Apparently, Emily had even attempted to snoop through my laptop and phone, but found nothing. I had anticipated that. Everything was securely locked down. I thanked Rachel for the information, but left the conversation feeling more certain than ever. Emily was panicking, desperate to regain control, but it was far too late for that. She was finally about to face the repercussions of years of manipulation, and it wasn't going to be pleasant. When I arrived home later that night, Emily was anxiously pacing in the living room. The second I walked in, she turned on me, her eyes wide with desperation. "Where were you?" she demanded. "Why didn't you answer my texts?" I took a breath, calm as ever. "Out," I stated flatly. Her voice trembled, frustration mingled with panic. "Out where? With whom?" I smiled coldly. "With whom it's none of your business." She flinched at that. "Why are you acting like this?" she practically pleaded. "I cooked dinner again. I waited for you. I just want things back to normal." I stepped toward her, looking directly into her eyes. "Normal? Like when you mocked me, behind my back, or when you bragged about using me to your friends?" Her face drained of color instantly. What are you talking about?" she stammered, attempting to feign innocence. "Don't," I stated sharply, cutting through her act. "I know everything. I've always known." She stood frozen, tears forming. "Who told you?" I laughed softly, almost amused. "Does it matter? You think I wouldn't find out eventually?" Emily stepped closer, reaching for my arm. I pulled back instantly, not letting her touch me. "Please," she whispered, desperate. "I was joking. I didn't mean it like that." I shook my head slowly, leaning closer. "You meant every word. And now you're scared because I'm not buying your act anymore." She stared at me, stunned into silence, finally comprehending the extent of her predicament. Over the next few days, Emily became visibly withdrawn, barely speaking, avoiding eye contact. It was clear she'd realized she'd lost. The dynamic had completely shifted. She had nothing and no one. Meanwhile, I was flourishing, calm, focused, fully prepared. Around that time, my lawyer and I had everything arranged, finances secured, accounts separated, all the evidence meticulously organized in one devastating file. I'd also quietly secured an apartment, a simple, modern place downtown. I signed the lease without telling Emily a thing. She was about to discover it soon enough anyway. About a week later, Rachel messaged me. It turns out one of Emily's friends, let's call her Steph, was hosting a big birthday dinner at her place. Emily had been invited but was hesitant about attending, mostly because her social circle was now fully aware she'd lost her control over me. Rachel, however, suggested this might be the perfect stage to expose everything publicly. I appreciated her line of thought. The day of Steph's dinner, Emily approached me cautiously, clearly uncomfortable. "Steph's birthday dinner is tonight," she began awkwardly. "Do you want to go?" I pretended to consider it for a moment. "Sure," I replied casually, surprising her. "Might be fun." Her eyes narrowed slightly, suspicious of my sudden change of heart. "Really?" I smiled calmly. "Yeah, why not? It's been a while since I've seen everyone." She nodded slowly, clearly unsettled but unsure why. "Okay," she said finally. "Thank you." Now she was thanking me for things I automatically used to do. That evening, we prepared in tense silence. Emily was dressed more elaborately than usual, probably attempting to salvage some dignity in front of her friends. I wore my best suit, sharp, polished, and deliberately intimidating. For once, I looked exactly how I felt, completely in control. We drove over without much conversation, the silence heavy. When we arrived, Steph greeted us with feigned warmth, though I caught her glancing nervously between Emily and me. Everyone else was already there, conversing loudly, drinking, clearly oblivious to the storm about to hit. Emily smiled nervously, immediately slipping into her artificial friendly persona. I stood calmly beside her, watching closely as she struggled to maintain appearances. Rachel was across the room, giving me subtle but encouraging looks. She knew what was coming. Dinner commenced normally enough, superficial conversations, feigned laughter. Emily remained unusually quiet, nervously sipping water, occasionally glancing my way. She knew something was off, but couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Midway through dinner, Steph turned to Emily, her tone overly bright. "So, when's your next big trip? Europe, right?" Emily hesitated, glancing at me. I don't know yet," she said weakly, forcing a smile. "Maybe soon." Steph laughed lightly. "Oh, come on, you never skip trips. You always said you have the perfect sponsor," she added jokingly, glancing at me with a forced smile. The table fell silent, sensing tension. Emily went pale, clearly unsure how to respond. Perfect. This was my cue. I leaned back in my chair confidently, drawing everyone's attention. Actually, speaking of sponsorship, I stated clearly, pulling an envelope from my jacket pocket and placing it deliberately on the table. I think Emily might need to start funding her own lifestyle now. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. Emily froze, staring at the envelope in horror. Steph awkwardly cleared her throat. "What's going on?" she asked uncertainly, glancing between us. "Open it," I stated smoothly, nodding at Emily. "Go ahead." With shaky hands, Emily picked it up, fumbling awkwardly as she opened the envelope. She slowly pulled out the papers, scanning the first page, then the next. The color completely drained from her face. What is this?" she stammered weakly. "Divorce papers," I announced calmly. "I've already filed." Emily's eyes widened. In panic. "But I don't understand," she managed to whisper. "Don't you?" I leaned forward slightly, my voice firm and direct. "I'm ending this joke of a marriage. You lost your puppet." Steph shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Should we go?" she asked nervously, looking around the table. But no one moved. They were captivated, unwilling to miss a single detail. Emily's voice trembled with desperation. "Please, don't do this here. Can we just go home and talk?" "No," I cut her off. "You never had a problem talking about me here before. Why stop now?" Her mouth opened and closed helplessly, tears gathering in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered weakly, defeated. "Save it," I cut her off sharply. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You had a man who would have given you everything: respect, loyalty, a life most women would kill for. But instead, you treated me like your personal ATM. You bragged about how easy I was to manipulate, how pathetic I was for spoiling you. Well, look at you now, Emily, realizing you threw away the best thing you'll ever have. You didn't appreciate what you had, and now you've lost it all." Gasps and whispers filled the table. Emily shrank in her chair, completely humiliated. Rachel looked down, uncomfortable but satisfied. Steph finally spoke, breaking the tense silence. "Emily, is that true?" Emily's eyes darted around desperately for sympathy, but everyone avoided her gaze. She had nowhere left to conceal herself. I stood up slowly, buttoning my jacket with calm finality. "From now on, you're funding your own lifestyle. I'm done paying your way and covering your lies." I glanced around the table, addressing everyone else. "Just thought you all deserved to know exactly who Emily really is." Then I turned back to her. "Enjoy explaining yourself to your friends." With that, I walked calmly toward the door. Behind me, I heard Emily weakly pleading, trying to salvage some dignity. No one offered support. No one comforted her. They enjoyed seeing her devastated after she had bragged about having a personal ATM in front of them. Driving home alone that night, I realized something important. I was often expected to give endlessly without question or complaint. Time, money, support, patience. But nobody ever taught me when to stop, or told me it's okay to walk away when it isn't appreciated. I thought about my dad again, realizing the key difference. My mom always respected and appreciated his efforts. Emily never did that. That clarity struck hard. I'd finally learned that true strength isn't just giving endlessly, it's also knowing precisely when to walk away from people who take you for granted. That night, my phone was overwhelmed with notifications. Emily called maybe 20 times, frantic voicemails, messages begging me to return, apologizing, trying every trick she could conjure. She began with anger, then quickly transitioned to sorrow, pleading, desperation. It was rather pathetic, actually. I listened to each message without responding. She had forfeited the right to any form of sympathy from me. I also received a message from Steph. At first, I thought she was inquiring about the drama, but no. She directly asked if I'd be willing to grab dinner sometime. Just us. Honestly, I laughed aloud. The audacity, truly. Steph had sat right there, laughing alongside Emily for years, and now she suddenly thought she had a chance. I replied with a single laughing emoji, deleted her number, and blocked her. It felt wonderful knowing I wasn't just done with Emily, but with anyone like her. The next few days were tumultuous. My lawyer swiftly finalized the documents and secured everything. We changed locks on the house, closed joint accounts, cut off credit cards, all the steps we'd meticulously planned. I moved into a small, temporary apartment I'd rented weeks earlier. Meanwhile, the repercussions from the dinner exploded spectacularly. Emily's so-called friends wasted no time gossiping about her humiliation. Screenshots from group chats quickly circulated. It turns out those friends who'd laughed along with her jokes were now openly ridiculing her, sharing every detail of her downfall. Rachel even sent me screenshots of their conversations. Did you see Emily's face? Absolute gold. Honestly, she deserved it. Maybe next time, don't treat your husband like garbage. Can't believe she thought he'd just keep paying forever, lol. It was brutal, but satisfying. Emily finally saw the truth. Her entire social life was fabricated, without money or the ability to flaunt luxurious trips and designer attire. She held no value to those friends. Witnessing her realize that was sweet justice. She vacated our residence within days. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved into a tiny studio apartment across town. Apparently, she was attempting to downplay the situation, acting as though it was a mutual decision, but everyone knew the truth. She couldn't evade the gossip, no matter how diligently she tried. Financially, things impacted her even more severely. All her credit cards tied to my accounts were canceled, and her lavish lifestyle disappeared overnight. No more random designer handbags or spa days. She attempted to contact me again. Messages, voicemails, even appeared at my workplace once, but each time, I shut her down coldly. I had zero interest in reconciliation or closure. Her messages ranged from desperate apologies, "I messed up, please just talk to me," to threats, "I'll make you regret this." Nothing worked. I didn't even flinch. Allowing her to spiral without any reaction from me felt deeply satisfying. My friends, meanwhile, rallied around me intensely. Most admitted they'd never approved of Emily, but didn't want to say anything. Classic, right? One friend joked about finally being permitted to say she was an awful person. We laughed about it, which felt great. About 2 weeks after everything unfolded, Rachel messaged again. She mentioned Emily had practically vanished from their group, no longer invited anywhere, completely disregarded. She burned every bridge, Rachel texted. She's finally seeing the reality she created for herself. Apparently, Emily had become completely isolated. Her reputation was ruined. People now saw her clearly, a manipulative, superficial person who received exactly what she deserved. Normally, I'm not keen on celebrating someone's misfortune, but honestly, it felt like genuine justice. My family was supportive too, especially my mother. When I finally told her everything, she hugged me and quietly said, "You deserve so much. Better than that, dear. I'm glad you finally realized it." That resonated deeply with me, but in a positive way. I'd forgotten what authentic support felt like. Things stabilized financially quickly. Without Emily's absurd spending, my accounts grew steadily. For once, I didn't stress about unforeseen expenses or her extravagant demands. Instead, I started planning trips I'd always desired to take, doing things purely because I wished to. A few months after everything erupted, Emily pretty much disappeared from my life completely, except for the occasional vague update from mutual acquaintances. Apparently, she had depleted the little savings she had left, was working some retail job, and maintained a low profile, probably hoping the gossip about her spectacular downfall would subside eventually. I barely thought about her, honestly. I was far too busy actually enjoying my life for once. Then, one random afternoon, everything transformed again. I'd stopped at a local cafe near my office, just grabbing coffee and catching up on some emails. It was quiet, relaxing, exactly the kind of thing Emily would have detested for being dull. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a familiar voice behind me. My heart skipped strangely for a second as I glanced up, annoyed, hoping it wasn't who I thought it was. Of course it was. Emily stood awkwardly near the counter, clearly hesitating about approaching me. She looked noticeably different. Honestly, she just looked defeated. Finally, she walked slowly toward me. "Hey," she said quietly, attempting a smile. Her voice was soft, unsure, nothing like the confident woman who'd once controlled my entire life. I stared at her blankly for a second, showing zero reaction. "Hey," I finally replied, completely flat. I didn't invite her to sit down, didn't smile. She needed to know instantly I wasn't interested in whatever game she thought she could play. Emily shifted uncomfortably. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, nervously glancing around. "We're talking now," I said calmly. "What do you want?" She flinched slightly, clearly hurt by my bluntness, but I didn't care. She took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. I wanted to apologize for everything. I didn't react, just waited silently, letting her words hang in the air awkwardly. She continued, I was terrible to you. I took you for granted, treated you poorly. I realize that now. Losing you, it made me see how messed up I was. I stared at her silently, letting the discomfort lengthen. She squirmed under my cold gaze, clearly unaccustomed to this version of me. I was hoping, she hesitated, her voice small, eyes hopeful. Maybe we could start over? Just as friends or something. I miss having you around. I actually laughed. Friends? I echoed, shaking my head slightly amused. We were never friends, Emily. We were barely even married. You used me. That's all there ever was. Her eyes instantly filled with tears, hurt and embarrassed. Please, just give me another chance. I've changed. I leaned forward. Have you though? Or is it just because you need someone to pay your bills again? Your friends abandoned you, your lifestyle's gone, and suddenly you want me back? Convenient timing. She looked away, her face burning red with humiliation. She didn't even deny it, which told me everything I needed to know. You know, I continued coolly, you were right about one thing. I was pathetic. Pathetic for ever tolerating your manipulation, pathetic for being good to you, which you didn't deserve. But you did me a favor, Emily. You woke me up. She stared at me silently, tears streaming down her face. I didn't feel even a hint of guilt or pity. She deserved every bit of this moment. You don't miss me, I went on calmly. You miss having control. But that guy you think you manipulated, mocked, he's gone for good. She opened her mouth, clearly desperate to salvage something, but I cut her off immediately. There's nothing left to say. Move on. I have. Without waiting for a response, I stood up, grabbing my coffee calmly. She stared up at me helplessly, completely defeated. I paused for just a second, looking down at her calmly. Oh, and don't ever approach me again. We're done. Then I walked away, leaving her sitting there alone, humiliated, finally understanding the reality she'd created. I didn't look back, didn't hesitate, because I knew exactly who I was now. Stronger, confident, completely free. After that day, Emily never reached out again. I didn't hear about her, didn't ask, didn't care. I was finally free, fully at peace with the entire situation. The life I'd built was completely mine now, one that no one could take from me again. A few months later, I started dating again, nothing serious at first, just getting back out there. Eventually, I met someone genuinely different, a woman who noticed the small things, thanked me for simple gestures, and made me feel valued without expecting expensive gifts or grand gestures. One evening, I gave her something I'd made myself. A small wooden carving, nothing fancy, just something personal. She lit up with genuine excitement, smiling like I'd given her the world. Seeing that excitement over something so small made me realize exactly how unbalanced things had been with Emily. It finally clicked that a relationship should never be about one person endlessly giving while the other just takes. It was never about keeping score, but about feeling valued and respected. And this girl, without even knowing it, reminded me what real appreciation felt like. And that's the one I would feel happy to spoil. Sometimes I reflect on how different things would have been if I'd never overheard her mocking me that night. If Rachel had never sent that recording, I'd probably still be blindly giving, trapped in Emily's game. I'd still be miserable without even realizing it. Instead, I'm genuinely grateful things happened exactly the way they did. As for what's next, honestly, I'm just going to live. No more stress, no manipulation, no toxic people. Just living life the way I want, on my terms, for once. I'm genuinely excited about the future. Thanks for joining me on this wild journey, Reddit. Your support meant the world. And if you're going through something similar, trust me, standing up for yourself is worth every bit of pain it entails.